Dear brothers and sisters, I hope peace be with you. And although we cannot meet each other face to face, but I am sure our heart will be together, especially on all the issues around the world, that our mission of reconciliation is so important. And I'm glad I have the chance to deliver the following lecture and the following discussion with you. Today's topic is the digital literacy of reconcilers, and that's so important. I hope my paper can, that's the beginning point for our following discussions. Let me begin. It is not a question, I think, of whether or not we as reconcilers should be involved in a digital world. It is a matter of how to make use of the digital world to bring about the reconciliation in this broken world. The reason is simple. Digitalization has been penetrated in every part of our life. Like a lot, it is part of our living and has been continuously and increasingly affecting our living, perception, and our world. Do you know who has the highest number of Instagram followers at this moment? Yes, it is Cristiano Ronaldo. He just broke the record and reached 300 million followers of Instagram. And do you know how much he can get from one Instagram post? It is around 1.2 million US dollars for each advertising post that he posts on his personal Instagram. What does this value tell us? It reflects how many people will be affected and the intensity of the impact. The value itself tells us that it's so powerful nowadays of the social media. One post worth 1.2 millions. And digital world, this word is a broad term to include the new technology in both technology, including data storage, calculation, mobile device, social media, and apps, etc., etc. When we talk about the influence from using social media in this paper, we have to bear in mind also the impact from all this digital technology. But I'm not going to repeat it, or it will be very clumsy to mention every single part of the digital world. So when I mention social media in the following paper, I mean the whole branch of technology behind it. The following paper will have three parts. The first part will describe the major characteristics of the digital world, focusing on the social media. Secondly, we will highlight the threat posed by this new development on reconciliation. The final sections will share the implication on our spirituality on reconciliation in this digital world. First part, general development. It is not an overstatement, I think, to say that we cannot discuss reconciliation meaningfully without taking into consideration of the impact of digital world. The impact has been deeply and broadly than many of us may have think before. The worldwide average time spent on social media has been significantly increased from 80 minutes in 2012 to 140 minutes every day in 2012 and 2021. The worldwide average time spent on internet is 6 hours every day. It varies from different countries. The number of Facebook users has been increased from 100 million in 2008 to 2,853 million in 2020, which is 28 times increase in 12 years. We cannot estimate the broadness of social media's impact, not to say Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever, and there's so many numbers we are not going to mention in this paper. And politically, we have experienced the power of manipulating social media in 2016 in the US presidential elections and the UK Brexit vote. An insider, Brittany Kaiser, who was the former business development director for Cambridge Analytica, has testified how the big data analysis of her company has made use of their data, which means our data, collected in every move of our daily life in helping Trump and the Brexit promoter to manipulate voters' political view. The whole story has been filmed by Netflix and published a book called Target. How can they manipulate voters' view? Isn't it we vote according to our free will? To make this long story short, having the advanced data collection device, storage and calculation technology, which we usually just call it big data, and most important of all, are willing to review our preference and value through our interaction in the social media. Digital companies can collect our preference and value through our interaction in the social media. Every one of our moves on the internet is watched, stored, and calculated. By calculation, I mean doing all kinds of correlation simulation through their preset algorithm and artificial intelligence. This information is more accurate than the traditional survey because our action itself is more honest than the verbal response. Where we go, what food we like, what post we will like, it revealed unlimited information to these digital companies. They calculate it, stored it, so every one of us has a file in these different companies, and they know our preference, our habit. Since they are now very accurate in understanding all of us, they have the ability to feed voters with news that can trigger their response and the political parties. What do these stories tell us? Some say that technology is neutral. I think that it's not wrong, but we have to be very careful when we hold this point of view. I would say that yes, but the one creating and making use of the technology are not neutral. Therefore, social media is not a value-free or merely a platform for us to connect or express our view as they claim. Instead, we have to imagine there is a big machine behind the whole digital world and we are inevitably interacting with it. The knowledge of it is what we call digital literacy. The better we know it, the better we can position ourselves in this digital world, and more importantly, the better we can fulfill our reconciliation mission. What is the motivation behind this digital world? An adjunct professor in Harvard Business School has a very famous saying. She said, "The search for profit drove decisions about expanding their user base, remodeling advertising, and converting users into market values." What does that mean? Since parties involved in the digital world are mostly profit-oriented companies, and consumers' data, including both primary and calculated data, are valuable, they have all kinds of temptation to collect, store, analyze our data so as to understand better our deep values. With these values, they can feed us with relevant advertisement, news, information so as to keep us longer in their page and of course motivate us to buy what they advertise to us. The outcome is reconciliation is threatening. The information we received will be driven by factors that are not necessarily leading people to be more connected, more understanding to each other, and looking for truth. To be direct, we are being driven into more individualistic, more self-centered, and a world being manipulated by hatred and prejudice. The second section, I will share how this digital world I just described will pose threat to our spirituality, especially for our reconciliation mission. First, the threat is on our worldview. People's worldview depends on information received and our interpretation framework, including our perceptions and basic values. We can see that some countries control tightly the information their people in their country can get and perspective they can share on social media. In China, people can only use authority-permitted search engines and social media. The outcome is that all information one can receive is very safe, and the worldview of these huge internet users are very similar. Once they found that someone, even though a very famous popular star, movie star, or company representative, share a view that is different from their or endanger their worldview, they will seriously attack them on the internet. And the company will be very threatened because their business in China will be seriously affected. This power is great, and we can see that there are a lot of apology cases last year including international leading brand. I'm not going to name it here. They apologize to this internet user in China because what they do, what they wear, what they say threaten their worldview. It does not necessarily follow that people's worldview will be closer to the truth in a democratic society, as they may be manipulated by other means, which I'm going to share. The second threat to us is our perception. To be specific, what I'm trying to say in this second point is that our perceptions are being trained by those cheap truth and isolation. It is not easy to know the truth of an event as well as to find a deep perspective towards an issue. It takes time, money, and patience to do so. However, people always prefer simple explanations, especially those explanations are similar or closer to our own view. Therefore, there is always a market to provide simple truth for people. Their truthfulness will not affect their popularity, as they only aim at those who buy their views. They package their perspective into a form of like canned truth and waiting for right customer to buy them. That is a phenomenon Chung calls it trolling the truth. It's more like fishing. You just put the truth and those who are willing to buy it will buy it. There are some characteristics of this truth. There are photos associated with them or videos, helping you connecting all the unknowns factors into a coherent story. Coherent doesn't mean it is true. There's also a perspective in the story so that you do not need to think about it. You just need to determine whether you buy it or not. Even worse, since social media will help you to screen out those posts that you may not likely agree with, which you won't spend time to read it. The result is that you will only see posts with similar view with you, or your original view will be strengthened. Using Ali Pariser's word, you will be isolated in a filter bubble. With the impact of filter bubble, we'll receive more news and information with similar perspective and the perspective in order to keeping you to reading it. The more time you spend on it, the more data they collected, the more accurate they know you. It's all about value to the company. This will further strengthen our own will because all the information we read, all the posts of friends we read will carry the similar perspective as we have. And finally, that is threatening to our reconciliation because we will not have a diverse perspective. Our perspective or people's perspective are becoming narrower and narrower, and sometimes becomes a prejudice that is hard to break. The third threat to reconciliation is about habituals. I would say that through interacting or spending time in social media, people become more self-attention or sometimes narcissism. The social media is described as an attention economy. It was built at the beginning date to attract attention. You can select your friends, and social media company also select those news and posts that suit your values and tastes for their profit. You will post information that can make you look more like who you want others perceive you. You will like, share, and post that fit your values, and also as your post will also appear on those who have similar value with you, which makes you have more, or you will receive more like than other opinions. So the whole social media world is around ourselves. The outcome is that more time you spend on social media, the more you will be trained to be self-centered. Dr. Ronald Reagan said, one outcome of a society shifting toward individualism is a lack of empathy, caring about ourselves and our own welfare, but not caring much about others. This surely poses new problem for reconciliation, as sympathy is one of our key spirituality for reconciliation. With people increasingly getting self-centered, it is hard to bring about genuine reconciliation. Last year, I have conducted a research on social media using pattern and the impact of the habit on biblical interpretation in Hong Kong. the result is alarming. On the one hand, I found that Hong Kong's Christians have similar social media using patterns as the world, a bit more time spent, but it's not too much. On the other hand, the research found that the high-intensity use of social media did intensify the polarization of the political view among Hong Kong Christians, making the gap between blue and yellow, the two colors to label different polarized political perspectives, become wider and wider. The interpretation of the same verse, example, Romans 13 verses 1, was highly polarized, and the pattern of these two groups of polarized Christians are likely living in two filter bubbles in a way that they only read and receive information consistent to their own will, which implies it is very, very hard, if not impossible, to bring about reconciliation among these two polarized Christians. Even though we give the same Bible words, but they will have polarized understanding and interpretation. So the implication to us is very important. Without intervention or message getting or breaking into their filter bubble, reconciliation is nearly impossible. It is time to call us, or it's time to listen to God's call to all of us to participate in this digital world, to bring new light and positive intervention to those who are trapped in the filter bubble and their self-centered world. The third part, I'll share the spirituality of a reconciler in this big data era, and also my experience in using all this social media and trying to do the reconciliation work. First, I'll divide into two sections. The first is I call this passive spirituality, which means, first of all, we ourselves should be aware, not being manipulated by the social media. The second part I call the active spirituality, how we actively involve and participate and bring out our reconciliation mission. I'll share some technical experience from my own experience. Romans 12 verses 2 reminds us, Paul reminds us that do not be conformed to this world. So that is so much important reminder from Paul that at his time we are not being impacted and also not being manipulated by the Roman values. Today that word is still sound. We should be very careful not to be manipulated by the social media world or the digital world. The first thing I will remind you is the fact check and spiritual check. Fact check, we all know what is it, but spiritual check is still very important when we being habited to use the social media. We have to be very careful when using and receiving information in social media and internet. We have to be aware that we receive is not random, nor it reflects the truth. We have not only to do fact check, but spiritual check. Read not only news of perspective that please you, but also seek and understand others' perspective. That is not always easy, but necessary. Using division between blue and yellow in Hong Kong, we will see that if we only read the perspective we hold originally, the result is that we will only strengthen our own perspective. So, how to break the filter bubble? There are two advice. First, follow pages that share different views with you. You have to intentionally like or follow others' perspective or pages that share different views. The reason is not only that you understand how other people think, but you allow different perspective becomes a habit to enter in your mindset. And technically, because you do not only receive the same or similar perspective, the algorithm will calculate that you are not only like posts that with your similar view, you also like posts that with different views. Therefore, the whole social media will pop up in your post that with a more balanced post. It, on the one hand, that you receive different perspective information. Second, you also manipulate the social media calculation, that you are not only like to read the similar view posts, you also like to read other posts, so that not same perspective posts will appear on your social media. Second, balance your media diet. What I'm saying is not just perspective at this point. We have to read some short comment posts, and sometimes we also have to force ourselves to read long with more deep articulation posts. We have to read varied interest posts, so that to make ourselves not stick together or stick on one perspective. Active spirituality. I think there is a calling to make good and righteous use of the social media. I'm not going to repeat how important the digital world is. I would like to call you to look especially to various channels or posts that provide false teaching, producing hatred and fake news, and see their number of views. Once upon a time, when I discussed with my son, and I asked him which post or which channel, YouTube channel you like most. He told me he liked one KOL from Taiwan. He told me he sometimes talk about Christianity, and I just because of his recommendation, and then I look for that man. It's called in Chinese 楼哥. That one, every post he posts has over millions of views. I'm really amazed. He definitely is not academic. He definitely is not specialist in every topic he talks about. How can he have millions of views? He's just sitting down with his wife and talk about some very interesting topic. I have to agree with that. And then he just share like every word he share is the truth. And he use photos, he use short videos, he use short clips, and he used pictures, whatever, in jumping into his own video. And that is so attractive that every post of his YouTube has over millions. Don't look down that number. That is significant. And even my son has been affected by his values and his worldview. Ask ourselves and pray to God, what can we do to these people? My suggestion for Reconciler is that to participate actively and righteously in the social media world. I started to do online teaching for free through YouTube channel half years ago. I taught 4 lessons on Philippians with 6 hours in total. The result is promising. For nearly 3 months, there are nearly 100,000 views for these 4 lessons. And I received comments, encouragement from all over the world. Of course, you can say 100,000 is little number as compared to many popular stars and also KOL. And I would say that is a misunderstanding. It is not a great number as compared to all these KOL. I agree with that. I'm going to share my experience and my reflection through my participation in this social media world. Advice number 1, produce attractive but not manipulating good material. Producing and translating good message into social media content is one important our mission today. People need good message. They hunger for wisdom, thirst for beautiful testimony. These are all essential elements for reconciliation. There are so many hateful message or popular posts that bring prejudice and isolation. It is not realistic to ask people not to participate in this virtual real world. There are great demand in it. Although the whole social media and digital world is developed by profit-making incentive, I'm sure there's still room, although very narrow, for us to use it. But I would like to share some key values of it. I have a motto through my experience of participating in this social media world. Be a faithful reconciliation translator. Make the good message into a great post. Make the loving message into a loving post. If we think about ourselves as a message translator, social media still be one of the place we have to put most of our effort to bring spirit back to God. The second reminder, right target. There are two problems associated with setting right target in using social media to promote reconciliation. On the one hand, there is misunderstanding that we may not have power if we have only a small number of audiences. Therefore, we decide not to use it. Just like when I share 100,000, it definitely is not a really great number, but that's great. Think about how many lectures do we need to deliver in order to reach 100,000 of students and audience. They are real people. They use their time to spend on reading your YouTube and your post. Of course, not all of them will reply to you, but use our faith to believe that. This time they spend on YouTube, either they receive hateful message or they receive your loving reconciliation message. On the other hand, there's a temptation to make our content attractive rather than genuine in order to attract more like. That is what I call the social media trap. In response to these two problems, I think it is very important to set the target audience right. It is not necessarily to get as many number of views as possible in order to make our message influential. It is more essential to get the right target audience and get our audience right. There are two important targets. Another example is that 2 months ago, I started another lecture series called Paid It Forward Lecture, also a free Bible lectures. I put it on my YouTube channel and with a mission. They are free to read my YouTube, but they have to pay it forward. Not pay me, but pay it forward. I hope some of you will remember a film. It used the same name. The idea is very important, very simple, is that I ask you if you are benefit from my video, you try to use what you just feel free to donate to other organization to let the love paid forward. And I asked them to take a photo of the receipt and send it personally to me. And I can tell you for the past few months, past few weeks, I received a lot of receipt photo, and that really encouraging. And some tell me they're in Canada, some in Sydney, some in Macau, some in Hong Kong. They really donating money to organization that we may not know before. And all of their action actually telling me that it is a right way to share message and values through the social media. Sometimes it is hard to present everything in a way that can attractive to all audience. Produce genuine materials that is attractive to them will be enough. Number of views may not be the only target, but quality views and right matching is. If we can produce good teaching and reconciliation perspective posts to the right group of brothers and sisters, the power can be extraordinary. However, if we can only attract high number of views without getting right audiences, it is still not fulfilling. And right audience is always attracted by right message instead of fancy KOL technique. I can tell you for the lecture I mentioned, I just sit here and then I will share the PowerPoint at the same time and nothing else. No music, no dancing, no fancy message, no fancy techniques. But the message itself, the Bible message itself, I deeply believe it is the point of attraction. Point 3, be a kingdom-oriented leader, KOL, instead of key opinion leader. We like to be a leader, but Bible calls us to be a servant. So we have to think about ourselves as a servant, but we bring the kingdom message to the social media world. We surely have to make our content attractive in order to attract people to look into our videos or posts. Because there are competition in the social media world. However, we are not going to only focus on skills. We have to focus on our message. If our materials do not present in a way that suits the mass media culture, the result will be simply neglected. However, to be attractive does not necessarily mean to be manipulative. There are surely some basic things one has to be aware in order to make our Facebook post or YouTube channel that is comfortable for those viewers. I'm not going to do detail, just highlight some very important elements that we have to be, if we are new on this area. Good photo is powerful. Number of words is important. For Facebook, whatever, beware it's not journal articles. A 500 articles will definitely be better than 1,000. And 100 summarized perspective will be easier and more attractive to those who are with a very long perspective. Good title does not necessarily mean force, but good title definitely help your readers to understand what you're going to say. For YouTube, one has to be aware of the lighting, sounding, the accessible language used. If you have subtitle, it will be definitely better. Whether one message is manipulative or not depends on whether one's message is genuine or not. For those messages are attractive but with distorted content, it is manipulative and is full of the social media world. However, a good and genuine message with attractive outlook is a beautiful testimony for God. Reminder number 4, creating dialogue. Dialogue is a spirit, and so as argument. It is also very important to generate genuine and long-lasting reconciliation through genuine dialogue. To prepare the room to dialogue is also a spirit to prevent ourselves going into a trap of manipulation, especially when you started to have fans. Because fans always support you. Everything you say, they will like it. I have many experience to have very good dialogue with people who do not agree with me. And thank God, and after the long dialogue, some of the cases, they thank me after the long dialogue on Facebook. My key is try your best to articulate and explain concisely the reason behind your argument in order to create the room for dialogue, but not merely argument. Of course, some people we intentionally create argument, but we have the mission to create dialogue. As a very short conclusion, I think it is a new mission for us as reconciler to start to participate and reflect how reconciliation works can be done through the good use of social media and perhaps other technology development I haven't mentioned in this video. I'm not sure there is a calling for us, but also I'm not only sure there is a calling for us to participate in the social media world, but also the calling is urgent and great. And I'm looking forward to the following discussion. God bless you.